Recently, Pakistan's President Asif Ali Zardari has signed a bill, which is now law, which has amended the Pakistan Electronic Crimes Act. And this is a very draconian bill. It effectively muzzles all dissent in Pakistan. The mainstream media had already been crushed. There's virtually no news worth its name which appears in the mainstream media. The electronic media, especially television, which at one time was quite vibrant, is now reduced to a few hours of cockfights in studios in the evening. In Pakistan today, the riyasat or the state is the army and the army is the state. So clearly, in a sense, you could say that when Pakistani journalists talk about the riyasat, they are talking about the Pakistan army, which is the state. Pakistani state has been trying to suppress dissent for the longest now. We've seen internet being blocked. We've seen the Pakistanis attempting to bring in a China kind of firewall in Pakistan, little realizing Pakistan is not China. With all its ills, the Pakistani public opinion is pretty robust in many ways. Dissent is quite common in Pakistan, and to completely suppress it is not going to be possible. Recently, Pakistan's President Asif Ali Zardari has signed a bill, which is now law, which has amended the Pakistan Electronic Crimes Act. And this is a very draconian bill. There was a lot of opposition from at least the media people. And there was, of course, the usual virtue signaling by some politicians who pretend to be in favor of democracy, freedom of speech, etc., etc. But when push comes to shove, and they get instructions from their bosses, that is the Pakistan Army, then these guys very obsequiously go along with whatever the diktat from the army is. So Asif Ali Zardari, in his true style, has decided to sign the bill within hours of receiving it from Parliament, and this bill is now law. And what this bill does is that it effectively muzzles all dissent in Pakistan. The mainstream media had already been crushed. There's virtually no news worth its name which appears in the mainstream media. The electronic media, especially television, which at one time was quite vibrant, is now reduced to a few hours of cockfights in studios in the evening. There is no serious programming going on, even when the country is riven by terrorism, there is separatism, there is an insurgency, two insurgencies, there is massive unrest in Sindh, in POK. All of this is happening. All that you hear in television studios at night is about what Imran Khan said or what some other politician said, and then there are those usual cockfights which take place in studios. That's the mainstream media for you. And the mainstream media is not allowed to report. For example, they cannot report effectively from what's happening in Balochistan. They cannot show the massive demonstrations which the Baloch Yakjehti Council organizes, the protests in that area, the massive protests in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. None of that is shown. Even terror attacks which are being carried out on a daily basis are suppressed, and information is very tightly controlled by the inter-services public relations. which is the media arm of the Pakistan Army, or the media core of the Pakistan Army. They are controlling that particular bit of news. News is censored. The Pakistan media, you cannot even talk about the army publicly. And ironically, very often the army is referred to as the Riyasat, which actually is a reality, because in Pakistan today, the Riyasat or the state is the army and the army is the state. So clearly, in a sense, you could say that when Pakistani journalists talk about the Riyasat, they are talking about the Pakistan Army, which is the state. So that is the state of affairs in mainstream media. The mainstream media in Pakistan has completely lost its credibility. Nobody takes it seriously anymore. And a lot of the news and a lot of the views actually had moved into the social media domain. In fact, many mainstream journalists who were suppressed and were not able to speak freely on their television channels or in their newspaper columns now resort to the social media, YouTube and other such avenues, Facebook, even Twitter, to air their views. Now, what the Pakistan Army has decided to do, of course, the mask is that this is a decision which has been taken by the so-called Parliament of Pakistan. It's a bit of a joke, because this is a parliament of unelected people, the result of a completely rigged election. But leave that aside, the parliament has pretended that, or this government of Shahbaz Sharif, who is probably the most ineffective prime minister in Pakistan, and probably, he is literally like the private secretary to the army chief in the local rank of prime minister. A man like him pretends that he is actually calling the shots and bringing in this legislation, and then you have this figurehead of a president who pretends that he's from a very revolutionary democratic party, who signs on the dotted line. So this is the state of affairs, and what they have now tried to do is muzzle the social media and completely crush any expression of opinion or any expression of dissent on social media. There are some very draconian punishments. This is a bad law. It would be a bad law anywhere in the world, but at least in a country which pretends that it is some kind of a nominal democracy, this is a travesty. This particular law which has been brought about, and the Pakistani state has been trying to suppress dissent for the longest now. We've seen internet being blocked. We've seen the Pakistanis attempting to bring in a China kind of firewall in Pakistan, little realizing Pakistan is not China. With all its ills, the Pakistani public opinion is pretty robust in many ways. Dissent is quite common in Pakistan, and to completely suppress it is not going to be possible. So you might be able to do it maybe on the social media sphere, but then how do you control word of mouth? Unless, of course, you're going to put the entire country in jail, which of course is an option for the Pakistan Army, which thinks that Pakistan is the Pakistan Army, and they can pretty much want to lock up the whole country and become some kind of one of those totalitarian regimes which have been there in the past, which have never lasted long. But this is what the Pakistan Army does. It keeps reconquering its own people, its own country, and that's what it's trying to do now. What the problem for the Pakistan Army, however, is that they feel that they need to be respected, they need to be honored, and their so-called sacrifices, which includes taking large land grants, massive subsidies, all kinds of privileges from the state exchequer, those need to be respected by the people. Now that's not happening anymore, in part because of the economic downturn, and in part because a lot of people in Pakistan feel that the Pakistan Army is the reason for many of Pakistan's problems, whether political, whether diplomatic, or even security problems. This was an army which was supposed to protect Pakistan's security and has failed to do that. So the Pakistan army is trying to refurbish its image, and it feels that until and unless it can control the narrative, it can control the discourse, it will not be able to really refurbish its image. Now, so what they've started doing is that once they realize that the print media or the electronic media controlling that was not enough, they turned their attention to the online media, social media, and other such avenues. And what they tried to do was, of course, the firewall, which doesn't seem to have worked. In fact, it has backfired because it has slowed internet speeds, and a lot of people who were part of what can be called the digital gig economy and were making a living out of that, because there is virtually no industry left in Pakistan, the economy is sinking. So these were people who were making a bit of a living from doing online work. They have started suffering, and this whole dream which the Pakistanis have, that they will become a digital economy, they will try and replicate India's success in the digital domain, that seems to be crumbling. And of course it will, because like I said, China could do it because China had a lot else going for it. Pakistan can't because it has nothing going for it. Nevertheless, so they put that firewall. They have now, and this is quite in keeping with the personality of the army chief, who thinks that every decision he takes, he must have some kind of a Quranic verse to back whatever decision he's taking. So every time he makes a speech, it almost sounds like a mullah is making a speech and ordering people or exhorting people to follow the diktats of the Quran. And he, as the new prophet of sorts, is the man who is telling them what they need to do, and finding validation from whatever he's doing from the religious texts. And so it's in keeping with that, suddenly they got hold of another mullah who declared that VPNs are un-Islamic. Now, I am not sure if VPNs existed in the time when the Quran was revealed, but apparently Pakistan's mullahs now think VPN is un-Islamic. If they think that they need to crack down on kites, partly because when people fly kites, they use a string which can actually slash people's throats. They will not use administrative powers to crack down on the people who sell the banned strings, but they will get a mullah to come and say that kite flying is un-Islamic. So they declared that VPNs are un-Islamic. They issued a fatwa on that side. And then, because internet speeds were slow and people were complaining, then they started making all kinds of silly excuses that the sharks came and eat up the optical fibers, or that some damage has taken place. It's only in Pakistan that this damage is taking place. None of the other countries in the region seem to be suffering this damage. So quite clearly they've been trying to crack down on it, and that's not really succeeded. So now they felt that they need to come up with a law with using which they can put people who express dissent, who air news which is inconvenient and which the state wants to suppress. They can call it fake news and act against them. So this new law is a law against fake news. Now, fake news is something which has not been defined, and fake news is again something which is very difficult to say what exactly is fake news, because what might be labeled as fake news today turns out to have actually some basis a couple of years down the line. And we've seen that in the United States, for example, where this whole thing that the COVID virus was a lab manufactured virus was debunked in 2019-2020. In fact, in many of these Western countries, you could be doxxed, cancelled if you said that this was a man-made virus, a man-made pandemic. This was not a natural thing. But now suddenly the very same people who were saying at that point of time that this is a conspiracy theory now say that yes, there seems to be a basis that this indeed was a man-made virus. And I could go into chapter and verse on how things that had been debunked at one point of time are validated later on. So fake news, at one level, we know when fake news is or tainted news is being published or being aired. I think everybody gets to know that. You could mislead some people for some time, but eventually everybody sees through what is palpably fake. So one is this whole thing that fake news has not been defined, and then in the list of crimes, for example, one of the crimes is that anything which is aired against the ideology of Pakistan. Now, the surprising thing is that the ideology of Pakistan has still not been defined. Nobody knows what the ideology of Pakistan is, but that's not all. They say anybody who speaks against the ideology of Pakistan, etc. Now, what is etc.? So you could add anything to that particular clause and say, well, this also, comes under this particular clause, and that makes you liable to having committed a crime under this new law, the PECA law. So quite clearly, the law is undefined, and it's a badly drafted law. It's a draconian law, and there is, of course, a lot of resentment which is building up within at least the journalistic community, or for that matter, what is now can be called the citizen journalist, because a lot of people are now taking to the social media, podcasts. These are not people who are certified journalists. In fact, who is a certified journalist? According to Pakistani certified journalists are guys who are members of some press club. That's crazy. There are businessmen out here who are members of press club. All kinds of people can become members of press club. So, but this is Pakistan, so there are weird definitions which they come up with. But the bottom line is that this entire effort, like I said, is being made because the Pakistan army has lost control over its ability to determine what the public discourse will be, something which it enjoyed maybe a few years back. It no longer controls the narrative. Despite trying very hard, it cannot control the narrative. And Imran Khan, who is in prison, who comes out during his court appearances and speaks something, that is what decides the discourse in Pakistan today. That is what determines the narrative in Pakistan today. And apart from Imran Khan, it are the other activists who are ignored by the mainstream media, who are deciding. There is this young woman in Balochistan, Maharang Baloch, who has been listed in the Time magazine or one of these magazines as one of the 100 most influential people. This young lady can, with the snap of a finger, bring out 100,000 people in a sparsely populated place like Balochistan. The state government in Balochistan has virtually no bona fides left. Even in the KP province, you have the PTM, the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, which is actually getting a lot more traction than normal parties. They might not be winning the elections, but winning the elections is meaningless in a country like Pakistan, where the votes are stolen anyways. In places like POK, again, we are seeing a new kind of mobilization take place. And again, in Punjab, where the amount of abuse that is being heaped on the Pakistan army is unprecedented. And the Pakistan army is desperate to try and control this, but it cannot. It is unable to. And which is why they brought in this law, thinking that using the stick of this law, they will be able to get a firmer handle over the situation. They've once again started cultivating young students and bringing them to form a new troll corps, as I would call it, something they had tried in the past with Imran Khan, which backfired because all those characters moved with Imran Khan away from the army. So they are now trying to recreate a new troll corps. So this is what they're trying to do. Now the Pakistan army has always tried to use the media to forge a narrative. I remember when Imran Khan came into power, at that point of time, the then DG ISPR, that obnoxious character, Asif something, his name was, I'm forgetting his name right now, Asif Ghafoor. He had come out and told the journalists that, look, for 6 months, just give positive news. Because if you give positive news, there'll be a positive mood and the things will pick up. It didn't happen. The media was, of course, obsequious and tried to give positive news, but there is very little positivity in Pakistan anyways. And a lot of what goes for positive news is basically a spin which is being given on news that whether it's on the economy, whether it's on the security front, you name the thing, they try and give it a spin, and it doesn't really work because what people are going through, people know. And I think the people are smart enough, even in a country like Pakistan, to know which side their bread is buttered. And dissent is pretty much part and parcel of the culture, so that is going to be expressed. And if things are not going in a desired direction, then obviously there will be a massive pushback that will be coming. Now, politically, I think by passing this law, the political parties have once again shot themselves in the foot. Now, People's Party is, of course, the slimiest of all parties. It pretends it's anti-establishment, but is easily the most pro-establishment party. It sucks up to the military every time and each time, because it thinks that the only way it can come into power is riding on the shoulders of the generals. So that is what the Pakistan People's Party is, with all these revolutionary and democratic noises which the dynasty which has inherited the party makes. The young entitled dynast Bilawal Bhutto and his utterances notwithstanding, and other frauds in the Pakistan People's Party who try and pretend that they are pro-people. They are not. The PTI is not blameless, because this law was also brought in by the PTI earlier, in its earlier avatar. And the PTI, when it was in power, wanted similar kind of laws to muzzle any dissent, to muzzle any opposition. And of course, the Muslim League, with Nawaz Sharif and his brother Shahbaz Sharif, they are the worst, because what they do is that when they are in power, they bring in the most horrendous laws, thinking that they will always remain in power and never go out of power. And ironically, every draconian law which they bring in, the day they are out of power, that same law, the wrath of that law, falls on their heads. And it's going to be no different with this particular law. This same law will be used against people who are the biggest defenders of this law right now in Pakistan. So this is what is bound to happen, but it does not augur well for the people in Pakistan. It shows that the Pakistan army is literally trying to strangulate all public opinion in Pakistan. And what is shocking is the silence of that so-called international community, especially the Europeans, who are constantly into this virtue signaling mode. They are constantly sermonizing and moralizing about freedom of speech, democracy and stuff like that. And they are actually even warning Pakistan that some of the concessions that they've given to Pakistan will be withdrawn if certain reforms are not taken place. But nobody takes the European Union seriously anymore, because everybody knows that it can only bark, it doesn't bite. The Americans don't seem to be interested, especially under the new dispensation. and the UN is a dysfunctional organization, so the Pakistan army thinks it can get away with it. The only problem is that the Pakistan army, what it does not realize is that just because you suppress bad news, it does not mean that bad things are going to stop happening within the country. The bad news is about the bad things which are already happening. Now you can stop the bad news, but you can't stop the bad things which are happening. And that is where the biggest failure of the Pakistan army and the Pakistani state lies. If they were able to control the economy, the law and order, the insurgency situation, bring in a modicum of political stability, have some degree of legitimacy, then a lot of the bad news which is coming out would automatically become neutral and maybe even positive. But if all that other stuff is going to continue to happen, then to expect that you will get a good press, you are not going to get it, whether on the social media, electronic media or the print media. You might not get bad press, but that does not mean that the pressures in the system will not continue to rise, and that is the direction in which Pakistan seems to be heading right now.